There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I am just thrilled. I'm just itching to get started. I can't wait. This is going to be a fantastic show for you today. We're excited to get this thing going. I have a good guest coming on who is someone, I'll let you know what the secret is later. I'll let you know later. But the thing is, we are ready to get this thing started because The Productive Podcaster is a podcast for podcasters. It is designed to help you to be more productive in a way that you don't have to worry about some of the things that other people do, because we're going to help you to maneuver and navigate through those trials and tribulations. So we don't want you focusing on how many viewers do I have, how many listeners do I have, how many downloads do I have, how much money did I make on your podcast. Yes, you want to do all those things, but we want to help it so that it's less of a worry for you and more of just part of your daily business. So that's what we do at The Productive Podcast. And we start off every episode with a segment that we like to call Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
So what is pros and cons? Pros and cons is our way of giving you some tips to help you to be a professional podcaster so that you don't end up having problems later on. Now, one of the things that we realize with a lot of podcasters is that when they talk to other people, when they talk, they don't know how to communicate via a podcast to make it sound natural. And the easiest thing I can tell you is be natural. But when I say that to someone, it's like saying, don't look down, because they're going to do it and it's going to get them even more nervous and afraid. So one thing we tell people to do is tell stories. Think about it like when you're talking to your friends or your family and you want to get something across and you'll tell a story with it. And when you tell that story, it gets them to relate because they can see themselves in the story. That's what you have to do as a podcaster. Tell a lot of stories. I mean, think about this. Imagine that you're with your best friends, you're hanging out, you're maybe going out, getting something to eat, and then you have something you want to relate to them. And they're all, just having their talking, but you want to get everyone's attention. And you say something, hey, remember when this happened? Remember when you did that and that happened and we got in trouble? Now all of a sudden everyone's listening because they're remembering and they're seeing themselves in that story. That same thing can happen when you're doing a podcast. That same thing can happen. If you tell a story that brings them in, all of a sudden they are your audience and they are hanging on your every word. When you do that, it engages them as well. They want to contribute. They want to be a part of it. Now, another thing you can do is use some analogies. Use some metaphors like this. Remember how that happened because it reminded you of this. Smile, be engaging. Make sure that people want to talk to you and put some humor in. It's okay to put humor in your podcast. It is quite all right for you to laugh. Yeah, it's okay to laugh on your podcast. I know many of you did not know that because you want to stay so straight and buttoned up and you want to make sure that this sounds so professional and so straight-laced. No, you can laugh in your podcast because guess what? I say it all the time. It's your show. It's your show. So if you want to laugh in your podcast, do so. Have fun with it. Take it easy. Relax. If you want to just, take off your necktie, let your shirt unbutton, fine. Just make sure you have something underneath. But just have fun with your podcast. Don't think about it as some regimented thing that you have to do that takes away from all the fun. Now, that is our pros and cons segment for today. Now, I want to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to bring on a very, very special guest for you.
You followings. You even thought about starting your own, but how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Procrastination is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Procrastination, and we make sure they hear your voice. Procrastination is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastination.com and get started today. That's PODKAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. Once again, I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I am fortunate enough to have a very, very special guest. Now, why is he so very special? Could it be because he and I went to the same college? That could be one reason, but let me tell you something about this gentleman I have. His name is EricMTwiggs. Now, Eric is the author of a book called The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. So you know that's near and dear to my heart, that subject matter right there. And what he's able to do is he's able to give a blueprint to beat procrastination. Now, some of you are sitting there watching this going, oh my gosh, that's me. So you can make more money, of course, doing that. You can get more business if you can beat procrastination. And Eric is here to help you to do that because he feels that is his divine purpose. Now, he has led organizations of 500 or more people in corporate America. And he has shared his message with corporations all over and associations and congregations all across the country. And he's a certified life and business coach, and he's conducted over 28,000 coaching sessions, 28,000, helping executives and leaders and entrepreneurs. And they've moved from being frustrated to being fulfilled. Now, he's also the host. This is why I wanted him here. He's the host of a podcast which I had the pleasure to be a guest on called The 30-Minute Hour. I'm telling you guys, it's a lot of fun. If you get a chance, check it out. If you get a chance to be on there, that was even more fun because I had a ball with Eric. But I want to bring to the Productive Podcast none other than EricMTwiggs. Eric, welcome aboard, man.
Hey, Barrett. Thank you for having me on your show. It's truly an honor.
Man, it's an honor to have you, brother. It's an honor to have you. Now, I want you to talk first about your book. Tell us about your book. What prompted you to write a book on getting over procrastination?
Well, it's just so critical. So the book is The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. So in all of my work, I've noticed, like you mentioned, I've had 28,000 coaching sessions, supervised all these people. You can have someone that gets good results, and then you can have someone that gets great results. And here's what I found is interesting is that in a lot of cases, they have a similar know-how level. They know a lot of the same things. But I found that the difference between the good and the great is the great. They just have this uncanny habit to do what they need to do, whether they feel like it or not. So I wanted to put a tool in people's hands that could help them go from good to great, and really become aware of those things that trigger them to procrastinate so they can move forward with the discipline of now.
That's great. One of my mentors, he puts it in a simple term. He said, the reason people don't do things is because they just don't want to.
Yeah.
And so you were saying the great ones, there's something they just do it. Whether they feel like it or not, they do it. And that's the thing. I agree with you 100% on that. So that's interesting. So tell me, how's the book done?
So the book, it's 12 chapters, it's 100 pages. I wanted to make it, an easy read, so to speak. because I know if someone's got a procrastination issue, they don't want to read War and Peace. Right? they want something that's simple to digest, and the book is got exercises in the different sections to help you to, like, for example, when I talk about creating your vision, there's a couple of different exercises that I have in the book to help you with that. So it's meant to be interactive, but the bottom line is when you're done reading it, you'll become aware of all those things that trigger you, and you'll be able to put a plan in place to move forward.
Now, you have a great podcast, a 30-minute hour. Was the book something that prompted you to do the podcast, or did the podcast prompt you to do the book?
Well, no, I'd had the book first, but I was just looking at other ways to get the message out. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to be the CEO friend of mine that you met, Ted Fells.
Yeah.
We would always talk and say, you know what, we have to find a way to work together. You're doing great things. I'm doing great things. We have to work together. And we literally sat down at a Starbucks and came up with the idea for starting a podcast. And we came up with the name, The 30-Minute Hour.
I'm sure you're not the first one to have a meeting at Starbucks and have it turn into something.
I won't be the last.
And you won't be the last, right? Exactly. So as far as the podcast, how did you come up with the format?
Well, we say that it's not your everyday podcast. And so one of the things with the book, I'm interviewed all the time on various podcasts. Mm-hmm. And I listen to different podcasts. And I noticed that a lot of them didn't have the personal humor element, right? You know, you bring the guest on, you talk to them.
Oh, we definitely laughed.
Right. So that's one of the things that we wanted to make it. So Ted and I, we have a great relationship, you know, as far as we're friends.
Yeah.
And that comes across on the podcast. So it's a mix. Our podcast is a mix of humor, it's entertaining, but we also make a point to throw in content that people can take away. So
and you do.
We wanted to make it different from all the other podcasts that are out there.
And that's what you have to do. And, you know, if you're going to do a podcast, if you're going to do any type of broadcast, any type of way to get your content out, you're going to have to make it something that people don't say, oh, it's just like this one or it's just like that one. So that's good that you do that. I want to know, how'd you come up with the name, The 30-Minute Hour?
Well, so it's interesting. Our original name was going to be Shooting from the Hip, right? Uh-huh. Because we didn't want it to come across as so scripted and so, you know, like every other podcast. But then there was a lot of shootings going on during that time. So we said, we may want to think about that name.
You get the wrong audience.
so then we ended up deciding on the 30-minute hour is because like the funny thing is most people think that the interview is 30 minutes. In most cases, it's an hour, but we wanted to feel like it's only 30 minutes. Like we wanted to feel like at the end of the hour, man, it's over already because of the entertainment, the humor, and then the content. So that's how we landed on the 30-minute hour. Okay,
that's cool. So when you started it, what challenges did you run into?
Uh-oh. So Barrett, I have patience issues sometimes, right? I like to see results immediately, and I'm thinking, you know, at first we did the first couple of episodes, and people were telling us these good things, so I'm expecting, we have 100,000 followers right away, but not seeing the instant following, I think is a challenge, and I think just, you know, having to, we learned, we kind of knew this, but we were reminded of the fact that you just have to stay consistent to really gather people's attention. So I think the challenge, and then just you kind of go through a trial and error phase as well. You know, as you get more experience, you start to see things that work better, and you start to see things that may not work as well. And so we just kind of we learn along the way.
So in doing that, in going through those trials and errors, what would you say to someone right now if they were starting a podcast to kind of ease the little tension that they have in starting it?
Well, I just think the podcasters, and I think you brought this up when you're on our podcast, like the typical podcast listener, they have a higher median income. They tend to be, they get it when it comes to investing in themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think it's an ideal medium, and I think it's a great opportunity to get your message out there, right? You don't have to wait to get picked. You don't have to. It's not like you're waiting for this big publisher to say you're
Right.
good enough. So now you can jump right out there, and you just never know who is listening. You just know we get
That's
so
the
caught
truth.
up. I've been guilty with this, right? You get so caught up in numbers. But if it's one person, let's say that one person is Oprah, that can be helpful.
Good point. Good point.
So I think the focus has to be just getting your message out there, and not worrying about how many listeners and if it's not perfect. Just getting your message out to people.
I agree. That's the key. And I tell people the biggest thing you can do is get started.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing you can do is get started with the podcast, because you never know where it can take you. Someone told me a long time ago, you got to be bad before you get good. So just start it. You're not going to be, a year from now, you won't be in the same position.
Right.
You will go. You're going to be forced to grow because you're doing it over and over and over again. Now, what would you say is your biggest growth from the time you started to now?
Well, so we've added video.
Okay.
And some of that is because of the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were forced, because at one point we were meeting in this conference room and we were just doing audio. We did some YouTube things.
Yeah.
But we weren't doing live video.
Right.
So we were forced to change. And the good thing is the timing was perfect, because we had already had 45 or 46 episodes under our belt. So
Right.
we had our timing down. And so when we went to live video, it was like perfect timing. And our views and our followers, it just grew.
That's what I was going to ask. That's what I was going to ask, because a lot of people, I get that question all the time from people about, should I add video or not? I said, it can't hurt to add video. Video, people, here's the thing about video versus audio, is that people may not have the attention span to always just listen to something, but when it catches their eye, they get hooked.
Absolutely.
Then they'll want to turn the sound up because they want to know what's going on. If they see you laughing on camera, they want to know what you're laughing at. So it's just one of those things that I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you say that was one of the biggest thing, the biggest growth things about your podcast, the 30-minute hour. Now, how do you vet your guests? How do you figure out who you want to be a guest on your podcast?
Well, I just look for what value are they going to add to our listeners? Mm-hmm. And we're fortunate from the standpoint that the one thing I hear from other podcasters is the struggle to get guests. And I hear about that but Ted and I, we have never had that problem.
That's good.
Like literally, we have the opposite problem.
It's great. That's a great problem to have. You got
it's never been a struggle for us. I think some of it is because of our networks, because we're tied to so many different types of people. For me, between the Hampton connection, between the fraternity, between all the people I meet when I'm out with my book and doing speaking engagements, and what's happening, and I think this is a good sign that your podcast is getting traction, when people are always reaching out to you, wondering how they can be a guest on your show.
That is very good. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And you're doing a great job in doing that. And you did mention the Hampton connection. Yes, we went to Hampton University. We both are alums. How many guests have you had from our prestigious university?
Oh man, it's been quite a few. I mean, it's been, I would say, at least 15 at least.
Wow. Now, and I'm bringing that up for those of you who are listening or watching this to let you know that you do have something to tap into. It may not be, Hampton University. It may be something else, but you have something to tap into if you're looking for guests. Even if you're looking for content, you can go to those people and get content from them. So that's great. Now, I didn't ask this. I meant to ask this earlier. When did you start, and how many episodes have you done?
So now we're on episode number 58. So we started, it was last year. It was like into January of last year when we started.
Wow.
2019.
Wow. So now, does Ted feel the same thing as far as the biggest growth being video, or would he say something else?
No, he'd say the same thing.
He'd say the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, he and I, we talk about it all the time.
So was there any apprehension about using video? Because a lot of people have apprehension about it.
Not really. I think that maybe there would have been if it was episode number 3 and we were starting to go live. Mm-hmm. But the good thing with us is even when we were recording it, we always handled it like it was live. So if we made a mistake, we just kept going.
That's it.
We just, and most of the time people wouldn't know, or we'll even call each other out if we make a mistake during an episode. And it's fun, it's light, and I think that's the big takeaway for anybody that's out there watching. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about the mistakes. Don't obsess. It's going to happen. Just keep moving forward. I mean, I think stumbling is a sign that you're on the right track. When you're out there trying to make it happen, you're going to have mistakes. You just have to keep moving forward.
And I always say, because my background is in television, I tell people, the people watching want to know that you're a human being like them. Then they can relate to you. So that it's okay to stumble over a word. It's okay to do that. It's okay to laugh. Let me tell you, I did a presentation the other day, and in the middle I had to stop and sneeze. So it's okay. People want to know that you're human. So that's a great thing about it. What I like. Now, I wanted to ask you, what made you go from recording to going live?
Well, again, I think just the situation. And we just saw the benefit of utilizing that Facebook Live tool. And as we're talking to people, you're starting to see people commenting in real time, and you can interact back with them in real time. It just adds another element. And every now and then, like we did a Q&A session with this business consultant. He's 7-figure business consultant. Yeah. And people were just firing in questions, and it went very well, and it wouldn't have been the same if it was just recorded in the studio. Right.
So that's good. I like that. I like that element that you decide to change from going live from going video to going live. So that way you can get more of a realness.
Absolutely.
A realness about it, and that's good. And don't get me wrong, guys. If you're watching, it doesn't mean you have to do that. No. But as you also heard him say, when he did it, record it, he did it as if it were live. So you don't have to, because sometimes I know a lot of people, they say, oh, I keep messing up. Once again, you still want to stay human. But if you mess up, you can record it and do it over again. It's okay. No one's going to crucify you.
Let me add something too. You know where I got that from? So I started out as a professional speaker, and I had a speech coach. His name is Ed Tate. He's actually been on the podcast, and he would always tell me, when you're practicing, even if you mess up, just keep going.
Yes.
Even if you're in the mirror by yourself at home and you practice and you mess up, just keep going. And that's just stuck with me. Yeah. And see, my background is from the media. If you're doing a news broadcast, you can't stop and say, can we start over? Like that. Right. You got to keep going. It's live. You got to keep going. So I appreciate that. So Eric, tell people how they can find out about your podcast and see it or listen. However. So, a couple of ways. You can go to Facebook and just type in the 30-minute hour, and that'll get you right to our page. We go every Monday at 7 o'clock. We do the 30-minute hour. We also, on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock, we do something called the 30-minute hour live on lockdown. And that's actually where we have comedians, and that's a whole different thing, Barrett. And that's growing like crazy. We have comedians. We present the lighter side of the lockdown. This is an opportunity for people to laugh. I mean, we have like musicians that come on. We have a DJ who plays music. So that's a different. Yeah, that's a second element of the 30-minute hour. So that's on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. But our traditional interview the guest, normal podcast, not your everyday podcast though. It's on Mondays at 7 o'clock. And then, so you can also go to we have a website, 30minutehourlive.net. I'm sorry, 30minutehourlive.net, and you can get to the recordings, because we still do go to the different mobile platform apps like Anchor and iTunes. That's great, man. Make sure you guys check Eric out. 30-minute hour. He's doing a whole franchise, as you can see, with 30-minute hour. So make sure you check him out. Eric, thank you for joining me today on the Productive Podcaster. And hey, nothing but Hampton love for you, brother. Hampton HU is in the building. All right, there you go. Have a good one, man. Hey, have a great one. Thank you.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Procrastination is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
Okay, we're back with the Productive Podcaster. Thank you guys for hanging in there. Didn't you love that guest? EricMTwiggs, man, my man, productivity. You know I love that. I love talking about productivity since this is the Productive Podcaster. I had the opportunity to be on his podcast, and he has been on mine. And, of course, we're Hampton University alums. You're going to find out I kind of love my alums, my fellow alums, as you would too. So the thing is, I want to thank Eric for being a part of that. So now we come to a segment in the show we like to call PodQuest. PodQuest.
PodQuest.
What is PodQuest? PodQuest is giving you the opportunity to ask a question of one of our guests. That's right. Ask a question of one of our guests or of me. We give all of you that opportunity. So we go to the feed and we pull out a question. Well, the question we got today was for Jamie Muskoff, who was our veteran, who gave who does the podcast for veteran spouses. And she said, the question was, Jamie, do you get pushback from the military on interviewing the troop spouses? That's a great question. And I was happy to get that from Jamie, the answer. And she was saying that the military doesn't really push back on it because she's not doing anything. There's no military secrets that she's given away. She's just talking to some of the spouses. And actually, as she puts it, it might be sometimes therapeutic for their marriage, for them to talk to somebody. And it's a fun way of just getting it out there to people, getting the message out and letting spouses know that, hey, you're not alone. Whatever you're dealing with, you're not alone. And some of the people who are in the military, they get to hear their spouses or hear someone else's spouses, and then lets them know some things that they may want to address or talk to about their family and how things are going with the military as well. Because I first of all, I think Jamie's doing a great job. I love this particular topic. And you'll hear me say a number of times, there's a podcast on anything. There's a podcast on anything. And Jamie does a great job with that particular podcast where she is actually reaching the troops and their spouses. So that's a great job. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for the question on PodQuest. We appreciate that. Now it's time for the podcast profile. The podcast profile on the Productive Podcaster. And that is Andrew Warner of Startup Stories. Andrew Warner has a podcast called Startup Stories. I listen to this podcast and I enjoy it because it's so captivating and so engaging. It pulls you in because it tells you stories of people who started businesses and how they got them started and the trials and tribulations and the triumphs that they had when starting those businesses. And it's just fun listening to it because I tell you, man, there's nothing like a great story. And what they do is they actually have sometimes some actors in it as well to act out some of the parts, and there's music and so forth. I love startup stories. If you really want to get a glimpse of some history, and if you want to learn while being entertained at the same time, check out Startup Stories. It's a podcast with Andrew Warner. I tell you, you won't regret it. I love listening to it because you learn and you're entertained and you're pulled in because the story is so compelling. So I challenge you. Startup Stories, Andrew Warner. Check it out. Download it on your podcast platform and make sure you're paying attention to it. Now, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for the giveaway, our Productive Podcaster giveaway. That's right. We give away something every week on the Productive Podcaster. Today's giveaway goes to Mr. Dwayne Hill. Dwayne, you get a free ticket to Podcast to Profits Live. It's our live conference where we are going to show people how to be podcasters that make some money, so some profits in podcasting. Dwayne Hill, you get to go because Dwayne Hill not only subscribed to the Productive Podcaster, but he also shared the Productive Podcaster. When you share what we do with other people, we put you in a drawing and you get a chance to win a prize. And Dwayne Hill is one of those people who is winning a prize. So we thank you and we welcome you. And we can't wait to see you at the Podcast to Profits conference. Now it is time for one of my favorite parts of the show. As you all know, I love the productivity quote. Today's quote, I love it because it's kind of funny as well. It's from Douglas Hofstadter. Douglas Hofstadter. He has Hofstadter's law. Hofstadter's law is it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. What's Hofstadter's law? It always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. And I told you it was a little funny one today. So understand this, because this resonated with me when I read that. A lot of people, when they start a podcast, they get so concerned about how slow it's growing. Oh my gosh, should I quit because no one's listening right now? It takes time to build it. And guess what? It takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. So understand that. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. Your podcast has to grow. It has to build. You don't give birth to an adult. You give birth to a baby and it grows into a toddler, a child, a teen, and so forth. It has to grow. Why aren't you giving your podcast the same privilege to grow? Let it grow. Your people will grow with you. And when you do, when that happens, you will see that it can blossom into something beautiful if you give it the time. You can't rush the caterpillar out of the cocoon. You got to let it run its course and grow into the caterpillar. Same thing applies to your podcast. It can be something beautiful if you give it the time, but understand it's going to take longer than you expect. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you one more time for joining me on the Productive Podcaster. I had a blast today. I want to thank our guest, Mr. EricMTwiggs. Appreciate you, brother. And you're welcome back. As you guys are welcome back next week on the Productive Podcaster. Make sure you share this with your friends. Tell them all about us. Subscribe. Get into the giveaway so you can get a prize yourself. Thank you guys for the questions. We appreciate you in the tribe. Thank you. And we'll see you again on the next The Productive Podcaster. Thank you for joining us on The Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.